So real cheery stuff. Welcome back to another Levity Books review. My name is Liam and I hope you're reading well. Today we're continuing my German literature series with The Trial by Franz Kafka, which begins with the main character, Joseph K., who all we know is a man who's living in a boarding house. He wakes up and he's arrested by people for a crime he doesn't know he's committed. And they don't know he's committed a crime either. They've just been told by someone from higher up. And so the story goes, he continually tries to find what it is that he's done and why he is being persecuted for it. Reading Kafka in general is like having the worst day in the world, so it can make you feel better about yourself in terms of things can get worse, but it's also quite an unpleasant and horrific read. I mean, have you ever had a day like Joseph K. where something goes wrong and then everything else goes wrong and it just seems somehow connected even though you know it's just a bad coincidence? This is precisely what Kafka does in all of his books. I've read The Metamorphosis and The Trial, and people have assured me that this is a constant theme through Kafka's writing. Just like the businessman in Metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa, who wakes up as a beetle, we have Joseph K., who wakes up as a criminal. It's hard to know if this common theme of a dreamlike quality and being punished for no reason is an intentional theme, because Kafka only wrote at night, and he was also a lawyer who dealt with people who were being punished for reasons he probably thought were not so correct. The foreword to this book is all about Kafka's life and nothing to do with the book itself, which suggests that it might have a personal basis, which is quite interesting. Most of Kafka's books were posthumously published, so he didn't want them to see the light of day, partly because they seem unfinished, but also because they're highly personal and they're critical of the judicial system that he worked for, so it would be unprofessional. So it's hard to know whether this book is a therapy exercise for an insomniac or is really a critical view about a world where everything is just unfair. If there is any moral to Kafka's stories, it's that punishment can be unpredictable, senseless, and unavoidable, which is a pretty horrible thing to say, really. So real cheery stuff. What perhaps is uniquely great about The Trial is that it draws on Kafka's own reflections of the judicial system. It's so hard to prove someone is innocent, Kafka is saying in this. The Trial was voted by a panel of experts as the second best novel of 20th century Germany. But you know what? Truth is, I don't think it's all that great. I don't really like Kafka because he writes these frustrating nightmare stories which are well constructed, but their message is terrible or absent. A message which is just unappealing, predictable, not all that insightful or helpful to humanity. Kafka has good means, but no ends. They're stylistically well constructed, but they're not great endings. While everybody praises Kafka, absolutely nobody quotes Kafka, which is a sign that he's a pleasant sound without a meaning. He is all style and no substance. And if you're bold enough to look up Kafka's quotes, you'll see that they're too spiteful to be cherished or praised. And it's really hard to root for his characters. They're all a little bit stupid, emotionally in denial, have unpleasant relationships with women, and they seem to bring this upon themselves, really. And the stories are so unrealistic and unkind, it just doesn't seem that worth my time to read them. But in light of this analysis of Nazi Germany, Kafka's writings were coming out in the 1920s, and in the 1940s, just after the war, they were even being translated and widely popular in America. And this popularity of Kafka's work around the time of the World Wars suggests its cultural relevance. And in The Trial, the ability of any of the characters to challenge what was clearly a corrupt system held by a hierarchy of power is exactly getting at the role of subjective reason in Germany that also prevented the public from questioning the Nazi regime. The Trial could boil down to a frustrating story where the protagonist is continually asking about the ends of his punishment, the reason for why he's being public punished, and all of the constituents of the punishment that he's receiving, all the people that are involved, are just in this hierarchy, and they say that we're just working in a reasonable manner of order. We're just receiving orders from above and working in our situation. We're working the best we can. And that's exactly the struggle that kind of kept everyone from preventing what was happening in Germany. It is exactly this inability to question the ends of a system, but just to repeatedly justify it on the basis of rational means, that forms a system which can have rigid obedience in the face of clear corruption and chaos, which Horkheimer suggests is what was necessary for Nazi Germany to have the popularity and unity that it did. So many people in this story fail to explain why Joseph K is being arrested or why he's receiving the punishment that he is receiving, but all they can establish is this strong chain of hierarchy of order. There is order in the method to this punishment, but there's no consequence or reason for it. It's chaotic, it comes from nowhere, it's unknown. And so I think Kafka's stories resemble this lack of faith in social systems that previously would protect the public from corrupt governments, that was just no longer present in the world at this time. And it shows the chaos that was experienced psychologically by wartime populations, that they could be punished senselessly and unpredictably for just no reason. And Kafka's prose also just reflects the brutality of subjective reason, because eventually his victims, his protagonists, forget to question why that they are being punished, and they just join the system and say, how can I avoid it? How can I avoid it? And they start jumping through hoops from people who are higher up, instead of just running away. Kafka's protagonists never rebel, and if they only rebelled, if only they moved, if they ran away, if they just said no, their situations might have been way better resolved. And Kafka's showing that if we don't ask the right questions, we cannot avert injustice. We must persistently question the right cause. The subjective reason as a system makes it particularly hard to ask these right questions. Why is this happening? But while Kafka is well praised, I'm not so sure if he has a good statement here. I don't think he is saying that we can really escape these systems of subjective reason. And so they're just horrifying books. I see him on the other side of Rilke as suggesting that we should kind of just surrender to subjective reason because there's no way out. It's a cynicism which I just don't find helpful to the German public in this situation, or to anyone in any situation. If we extract this outside of the rule of Nazi Germany, Kafka is just showing us someone who gets punished for no reason. Great work, Kafka, you're making the world a nicer place. Kafka doesn't want to show us how to escape, only what it feels like to be in a system you cannot escape, which I don't know if is a reality or a level of consciousness that people need to be aware of. If you like the dreamlike nature of Kafka's writing, and you're not so focused on the ends, then you will probably like this. This is a well-liked book. I just don't think its message is in the right place. Happy reading.